Okay, welcome back to another episode of Jasmine's Guide to Life Seeking Purpose podcast. I'm Jasmine, a career consultant, influencer, inclusive leader, advocate, mentor, connector, author, entrepreneur, but most importantly, a Black woman on the journey of seeking purpose, hoping to positively impact people along the way. I started this podcast to bring the aha moments and inspirational pieces from my book to life. So by facilitating these meaningful conversations, listening to diverse perspectives, I hope to continue to keep that growth going and positively impact others along the way. So today we have a special guest, I would say a man with many aliases, variety of roles. So I decided to come up with my own. Okay? So creative, critical thinker, intuitive, float extraordinaire. We'll also say a Jasmine's Guide ambassador.
Okay.
Who are you going by today? What's the vibe?
The vibe today, can't really pinpoint one. Because it's so many, but the sun is shining, so a lot of times when the sun pops out, I turn into patio poppy. I might throw on a scarf, let my chest hair breathe a little bit, a couple buttons at the top open. But yeah, I'm feeling like patio poppy.
Okay, so Mr. Rodney C, thank you for joining me on the podcast today. So how this topic came to life, or this episode, well, one, I felt like this would be perfect for you. All of us are on this journey, right, of figuring things out, or what I call seeking purpose, or figuring out who you are and what you're meant to be doing. So I want to dive into the basics of becoming and actually developing into the person who you want to be, or who you are actually called to be. So although it's not a destination and it's a journey, there's these pivotal moments that we experience, that whether that's transition or something that we see or we're a part of, that develop you and cultivate those sense of kind of core values. So I want to talk a little bit about like what that journey of seeking purpose actually is, for the people who are asking that question. And I thought it was also important to get the male and female perspective at these kind of like significant moments in life. So as my good auntie and bestie in my head, Michelle Obama, says, we're talking about becoming, and I'm excited to see where the conversation goes.
Me too. I'm super excited.
So I've been starting each of the podcast episodes with a loaded question, right? And it's the way I actually start Jasmine's Guide to Life Seeking Purpose. So the loaded question, who are you? And when I say who are you, like who is Rodney C? And when I say who are you, is like, what do you want people to know?
Who am I? There's a loaded question. I'm a creative, like you said. I'm thought-provoking. I say the phrase, it's the creation and formation of all things. I think that's who I am at the age of 32. I've always thought a little different outside the box when I was a child. Growing up with my close cousins who are like siblings to me. I thought different from them, so I had to find out who I was. My sister was 11 years older than me, so she was out doing what she was doing, and they had each other. I just had me. So at the age of 32 right now, I just think it's like I said, it's the creation and formation of all things. I was thinking earlier while I was working that I live a colorful lifestyle. That's me bouncing around. That's me finding myself. That's me getting others to hop on a journey with me. Yeah, it's very colorful, as well as like, the clothing that I wear is colorful at times too.
Okay, thanks. So I mentioned how this topic kind of came to life just from like different conversations and people asking me, or whether it's in consultations or just random conversation with people. And it all seems to be like you grow into who you're supposed to be, or what you're called to be, whatever. There might be like some glimpses or things that you can think back and say like, oh, okay, that connects, or what have you. But what would you say has been one of those like aha moments or experiences that you feel like guided you into becoming like, in this sense, like authentically you? So you talked about this creative, you talked about the relationships that you have and the people who matter to you, and now being at 32 and feeling, for lack of a better word, sense of sureness.
Yeah.
What was like that? I shouldn't say that one, but what's one that you feel like really shifted?
First and foremost, 32 is magic number. Shout out to Magic Johnson. Then what was one aha moment? So many, and right now I'm having them left and right. But I would say over the past couple of years, I've grown stronger friendships with friends that I've been that I grew up in high school, as well as new friends. And this journey with them on the side of me, as well as my family, pushing me to actually let me know that how can I say this, that the path I'm on is the right path. My mom always poured into me, my sister as well, my niece and my nephew, as well as my father. But I think that I just had to wake up at the age of maybe 25. At the age of 25 was when I really like turned it up. I changed my eating habits. I would change the things that I would listen to on the radio, whether it being iPad or iPhone, whatever. But I would change what I would listen to, and I feel that that started to change my world drastically. So I thought that all things was in correlation. The things that I was learning via YouTube, university, the books that I would read, and the conversation that I would have would all be connected. So that's when I really woke up like, yo, this is about to get lit out here.
That's interesting you say that. So on the last podcast, I was saying how like I feel like 25 was also that like pivotal age for me too. And it's really funny because I felt like 25 was a milestone, and me and my mom actually kind of got into a little squabble about it because she was like, 25 isn't a real milestone. That's something that y'all made up to, have parties or whatever. But I actually feel like that was like such a transition. And I didn't realize what so much of what was going to come with that. So it's really interesting. And I feel like those aha moments, at least that I have or that I talked about in the book, they've definitely 100% like led me to finding me. And even the things now, it's this strange experience that people are reading those moments and they're seeing themselves in very different ways. And so they're coming back to me, and then now they're asking me for advice or these experiences. And now I feel like I'm reliving them again, but in a whole new way. But yeah.
I think that as you were saying your piece, I was thinking back when I was a child and I would like certain music, but I couldn't really let my cousins know because they'd make fun of me. What was the one song? It was very popular. It used to be on like movies and stuff like in the early 2000s. I can't really think of it, but my cousin found out that I like the song. I'm a child, so I'm like, well, it might not be cool to like this song because they deem was cool, right? But as I started to grow older, because it's like you have to be real tough and masculine when you growing up. So it wasn't cool to like that song. I'll think of it once the time progresses. But now I'm like, man, I like all types of music, and I'm free to say that. So maybe if you like a little bit of Lady Gaga when you were younger, you would be on another side of the spectrum. And that's just me growing up, right? That's my surroundings. That's what I'm listening to. That's everybody that's around me. Like, I had to soak all that in. Like, there's still nothing wrong with that if you like Lady Gaga. I'm sure somebody who's a male figure is in the studio with her making that same song, but music is so universal. Why it doesn't matter if you're a male or female if you listen to Beyonce or Lady Gaga.
Okay, so I want to unpack that a little bit because I feel like a huge part of becoming is this sense of like confidence that has to develop, right? So even something like being afraid to share the kind of music that you're into, or it could be a sense of style or the way that you think. There's got to be a point where you're okay with being different, okay with being other. And I guess, when did you develop that confidence, or what helped you along the way?
I'm still developing it. Within my earlier years, I was called weird. I hated it, and I had to defend myself and maybe act the way that I wasn't supposed to be acting at that time, just to not be weird, quote unquote. I think in my, let's say 25 again, I started to grow into me, started to realize that weird ain't bad. It's just, I'm just not like them. It's a difference. It's a difference between me and them. The difference here is just me. And I started to own that, and just not care. Whether it being something that I got on, why you bring your scarf like that? Why do I have to provide explanation to you how I'm kicking flavor? Like, it doesn't matter. I'm doing what I do regardless. Just worry about you. I started to own that at the maybe like 24, 25. Yeah.
That's interesting because I feel like you said, that's an evolving process of that sense of confidence. And I think each new level that you go in life, there's going to be something that you got to adjust to and you got to build in that space. But
Right.
um
I call it graduation. You graduate to another age. So like say something is out of style. You can't wear, I'm not gonna say name brand, but you can't wear a certain name brand because it's not popping no more. However, you have universal brands that are timeless, right? Like I'm not gonna call them brands. But you have a universal brand that's timeless. So the universal brand never dies, right? Whether it be the socks that you put on, the pants, that brand's gonna stand the test of time, rather than being trendy and just coming out when you feel the need to. I just feel you have to be universal.
so outside of, I guess, the external factors or people, right?
Okay.
Like, what's one of the internal things that you feel like impacted that ability to like move confidently, or something that you find yourself like?
So I've always been a deep thinker, and I would create these thoughts into my head that there were assumptions about what I think people may think about me. Then I started to realize that none of that matters. And I had to give myself affirmations at the time that I didn't know were affirmations. Listening to a Young Jeezy song, he said, head up, chest out, never fold, or something to that aspect. And that stuck with me. Like, you can't let no one take you down, no matter if it's verbal, if it's, you know what I'm saying, mentally, or whatever the case may be. And just repeating those words in my head, and then, also having a family behind me that don't take nothing. I grew up, I'm short, so I'm 5'6", 5'7", whatever, 5'7" on a good day. So that wasn't always, the cool thing, because I'm short, so people making fun of you left and right. So I thought that as a young child, like, well, if you're making fun of me, that means something is wrong with you. I don't know, you might not like my style, but my style is just impeccable. And I started to break down my opponent mentally and verbally. So all that stopped, once I became playing tech.
Interesting. Yeah, I would say, like, personally, I think I got to the point where I felt like I didn't have a choice but to be confident, right? Like, I had to like go to something like walk in the room and like show them what you got. Like, right? Like, but not even that, of like, more people are paying attention to you than you realize. And on the other side of that too, like, how many people are you keeping or holding back because of a door you refuse to open? So I got to that point of like, there's a reason why people, for lack of a better word, intimidated or feel some type of way about whatever that is. So at what point do I take the responsibility and follow through? Yeah, which is also still, like I said, a work in progress. I think that's been one of the highlights and strangest things about writing the book. Like, I just had somebody send me a message who I'm really close to. They're like a family friend. And she's like almost 12 years older than me.
Okay.
And she read it while she was traveling. And she was like, I just had to say something to you. And she was like, even at, 40 plus, like the way that this is making me think, or I'm so glad that you shared this. And I think so much when we talk about like this confidence building, we talk about these like heroic stories, right? But also not recognizing like those moments that you do have to break, or the things that you weren't at the moment feeling vulnerable enough to share, how much weight it actually holds.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, you gotta let your light shine. I was during COVID when I thought it was gonna be the end of the world. I was going through a breakup. I didn't know if I should step outside. I just had purchased a property. And a lot of things was going on. And I took a trip to Vegas, and I was poolside in Cabana. I'm getting busy. And
A light flex.
And a couple of my friends walked in, and then, they started to mix and mingle. They rounded up some females, brought them back to the Cabana. And the young lady started to read my arm like it was a book. So she's like, oh, you got the ankh, you got the eye. So she called her sister over. And they realized I had 1111 tattooed on me. I was born on 1111. I just always knew it meant something. I just didn't know what it meant until I got a little older. But the young lady was like, she let me know that she was a medium. So, I'm a skeptic. So she was like, she started to break me down. She started reading me. She was like, you've had a troubled year this year. You asked me if I just did something with the business, which is coincidental. Nothing is a coincidence. I just had opened up my business bank account before I went out there the morning of to Vegas. And then she said, it's something with your throat. You have to speak more. There's something with your throat chakra. And I know I'm not a speaker. Like I like to be low, and I like to be in the cut.
I'm
right?
taken aback.
Yeah.
Not a speaker.
I'm not. I'm really not. I'm working on it. I'm forever evolving. But when she said that, it hit home for me. So I stepped away from the young lady. I did a lap around the pool, shed a tear, and I got back to it. But the thought was deep into my mind, because that's what I always heard. You have to speak more. I mean, my mom told me as a young child, if you close mouths don't get fed. And then growing up was the same vibe. So I'm just learning to speak more.
Okay, so this is a two-parter.
Mm-hmm.
One hand, a lot of this is like, I think related to energy, but also people.
Sure.
The energy that they hold, the energy that they bring, and how does that impact you? And I think there's this fine line between like navigating in seasons of isolation, as well as like finding your people, right? And also noticing like and recognizing that the temporary sometimes moments of when people are supposed to be there and not. So I'm curious as like, what do you feel the connection of people and energy as you transition in this space of like, okay, you're confident, you kind of know who you are, or you're confirming some of the things that you already knew, right? But then where does energy and people play into that sense of becoming?
I think it plays a big role. My constituents, my team, my brethren, I have like a solid squad of 6 so far, and this is just organically. I'm not going out looking for other team members or friends or nothing like that. These fellas all have the same frequency that I operate on. That's to grow, to build, and to manifest, to be successful in whatever you're doing, whether it be cooking a bowl of rice or buying a house, right? We want you to be successful on all avenues. And it's like the law of attraction. The law of attraction is like, just like me and you, right? So you attract like-minded individuals into your circle. If 3 people are robbing a bank, you're possibly gonna be the 4th one if you hang around the squad. If you got 3 millionaires, you possibly be the 4th one because you hang around 3 millionaires. So I just think that you surround yourself around the right people at the right times and have that optimistic mind frame as to you're gonna be happy, you set your intentions, right? You set your intentions before you walk into a space. whether it being a grocery store party or a network, you come to conquer a goal. And that goal is to move off of, for me, is move off the love and frequency. I lead with love. So smiling, laughter, just having a good time. I don't have to have libations in my system in order to have a good time. As soon as I wake up in the morning, I'm having a good time. The sun might be shining. It's Buffalo, so you never know. But I give my prayers, affirmations, and I meditate. But that energy that I'm bringing into my life right now is just, I guess, God given from a spiritual standpoint. And that's the energy too. I mean, if my man having a bad day, I know that he can call me and somehow I can brighten up his day, whether it be with a conversation or a laugh or a smile. But it's how can I say this?
I don't know. I think you said something important that I think people don't forget, shouldn't forget rather, is the people in your life. One, it's important to have folks who can see the things in you that you can't necessarily see, and evaluate, are they assignments or are they a part of the purpose, right? Like, are they supposed to be teaching you something and you're supposed to be teaching them something? It's temporary and that's what it is. Or are they for the long haul? Are they a part of purpose? Like, are they helping you on that whatever vision is? And I was listening to something and they were saying how you need to be cognizant of value, not just vision, because visions change, right? But the values are kind of like that core, and that's the value of becoming. You got to know what you value,
Right.
To then be able to discern who's supposed to be there and not.
That's so true that you said that. So the breakup that I was going through a couple of years ago, like I said, I moved into a new house and I put up the shower rod. Right? Want to talk about energy? I put up the shower rod and I knew it was sealed. It was tight. You know what I'm saying? You could meet me and Stevie, not Stevie J. You could meet me off of that joint. So the shower rod would fall from time to time. When the individual wasn't in the house, it would fall. When she was in the house, it would fall. I paid attention to that. When we broke up, I had another young lady in the house. Shower rod fell. I just thought it was a huge correlation. Like, these women don't belong in my life right now. The first woman I'm talking about, she so I would have visions of, I still got visions. I get busy, like I said. So my thought is like, I'm gonna be the next Don Peebles, right? Mixed with a little bit of Kanye West, mixed with Deepak Chopra and Malcolm X. So my vision, we was in the process of purchasing the property. And, you run into hiccups. I'm a very optimistic person. I'm going to operate on positivity, positive thinking. This young lady, however, said, why do you think that you can buy this? Just buy a single family home, and that's your property right there. Not verbatim, but that's what it was. And I looked like, I gave her that look. I just didn't. I had to process that thought. Because if you got a partner, you're going to root for that partner, rain, sleet, hail, snow. You know what I'm saying? And the individuals that are around me right now are rooting for me just like I'm rooting for them. That's what I mean by like-minded individuals. If you got a dream, you throw a dream in our chat, we're going to push you to the fullest extent, you know what I'm saying, to conquer that dream. Just like you, right? We talk, have conversations, and we build organically. I mean, and it just flows, like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like-minded individuals that attract like-minded people. Like-minded individuals that attract like-minded people. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
So one of the things in that little tidbit you had earlier, the key word was time. And one of your trademark phrases, and I could be paraphrasing, so don't fully quote.
Okay.
But you say something along the lines of timing is everything, right?
Yes.
So one is time and energy.
Mm-hmm.
And how does timing play a role in your journey of seeking purpose?
I think I'm right on time for everything. If I had this vision at actually, I didn't have this vision at the age of when I was in my early 20s. I knew that I knew how I wanted to operate my life. I just didn't know how to get there per se. I knew I wanted to get into real estate. I had this young lady ask me, what do I want to do after I graduate? And I told her I want to ride around in a nice car and collect rent, right? I know I want to do a little bit more than that, but that means just the freedom of being me. The freedom of being me was not ready at the age of 23 or 27. Now that I'm 32, now my ducks is in a row, I'm ready. And I think we age as human, we age ourselves. So if we're 36, I feel like I'm 36. From 50, I feel like I'm 50. Then meet somebody and they ask you your age and say, you don't look like you're 36. And my first thought is, what does a 36-year-old look like? Or what does a 32-year-old look like? I guess it's natural to say as humanoids, but don't put I would say I can't put an age and time on nothing that I do because it's just forever evolving. You know what I'm saying? I was watching 19 Keys and I forgot who he was interviewing, but he was talking about age. And he was like, well, have you ever been 18? Have you?
Are we talking literally or figuratively? Like, yes.
Right. But then he said, have you ever been 50?
I mean, I'm an old soul, so I'm the wrong person to ask.
Okay, so that's you date yourself again.
You know, but I think that's where I say sometimes it's energy, right? Like, because think about what comes with that, right? Like when you think about age, you typically give people characteristics. And I think that also goes back to value. So when I think of that, I think of wisdom. I think of confidence that comes with that. I think of security that comes with those things. So I think you can feel those things and not be them. So I could see both sides of it. But the reason why I asked you that question is I feel like that is a huge hindrance for people on the journey of seeking purpose. Either they're so worried about time and they feel like they're not where they think that they should be or where they thought they would be, or on the other side of it, they think that they have so much time. And then there's that sense of privilege of, oh, I got time and I'm not going to do that. And I think there's gotta be some sort of balance in that. And it ebbs and flows in the time of where you are in life. But I just even think about myself, which it'll be related to the hot take I'll pose in a second. But I talk about this in the section of the book called The Pressure of the Weight, right? Like a lot of us have goals. A lot of us have things. We have visions the way that we should see our life. And we can be so rigid and wanting to get those things right away or whatever. And I think, like I said earlier, those moments that cause you to break or learn, teach you like yes, you want those things, but you don't want them before you're not prepared to maintain them or have them, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And thinking about those moments of now that you have had some of those achievements or other things, like then you realize like, oh, I couldn't have had this if I didn't do this. Or yeah, it took me a little longer. Or the last episode, we talked about comparison and different quiet lessons that, and quiet lessons are the things that you pick up just by experience of life. So you talked about like your mom, your sister, your dad, things that you learned just by watching them, whether you were going to repeat those things or adjust them because of those experiences, but they hold so much weight because that's what you believe to be true. Gotcha. Or when you feel like, oh, I got to do this because the expectations that I have for this or that. So I wouldn't necessarily say that I would do anything over. I just wish I would have thought about the concept of time a little bit differently.
Well, how? I mean, because you're living in the present moment, right? What do you mean? Do you feel like you're lollygagging?
No,
okay.
I don't feel like I lollygagged. I think my mantra for the longest time was like temporary sacrifice for long-term gain. And which is true. And there are certain things that I'm grateful that I did, especially now. But on the other side, I feel like I could have lived life a little more I want to say free, but I think I would have explored a little more earlier instead of feeling like I had to get so much done. And it actually took having some really good conversations after writing the book. And people asking me questions or in therapy too, of just kind of like unpacking things. In another episode, we're going to be talking about how trauma is more than just like physical or emotional experiences. There can be things that you inherit just by living or those quiet lessons. And I felt like I had a lot of expectations. Like I'm an only child. So there's pressure that comes with that. I have a mom who's high achieving, and then have a dad who works really hard. And so you see that balance, and then just the things that you put on yourself as far as expectations. So for example, like I thought they were expecting perfection. And up until we had a conversation like a year ago, they were like, we were never expecting perfection for you. It was just, we wanted to make sure that you were okay and stable.
Right.
Like those things of how those impact the way that you look at time. So you got to finish, you got to do this, you got to have these things to prove that, you know, you're meeting those expectations, or even where other people are. Look at social media, like,
Yeah, social media.
yeah, the organizations or the people that you're around, yes, they can be motivation, but also you're like, okay, they just did this, then, oh, I got to step my game up, or I don't want to be the weak link, or
Right.
whatever.
That's putting it's like a barrier on your life, like you said earlier, in regards to putting expectations on your life. And it's like a microwave society right now that we're living in. I always say fast money is crash money and slow money is grow money. Depending on what lane you're in. But the thing about it is, when you say, if I were to purchase a property at the age of 22, that might be the trap spot. You know, at the age of 22, I might have just messed up my credit, everything. But at the age of in my upward 20s, I'm ready for that. Right. I was going through real estate school at the age of 23. I just didn't know where I would want to take it until I started to dive deeper into realty and real property. And I was so many different ways to skin this cat. I wouldn't have been ready at the age of 22 for that. I was doing it just because my mom mentioned it. I was like, okay, it might be a great thing to do, get a little bit extra money. But I wasn't ready.
Right.
I wasn't ready at all. Timing is everything.
See,
Yeah,
you say it.
timing is everything. That's a fact.
And I think that's important too. Like, I don't regret any of those things, or those hard moments, because now I feel like that is a part of my purpose, especially.
Put expectations so that you thought that your parents were expecting from you.
I think it's a mix of both. I think
Okay.
everybody naturally does this, whether they realize it or not. I think we have expectations that are personal that we put on ourselves based on interpretations of the way that we show up in spaces, or we want people to think or feel about us. Then I also think the people in our lives that we love and care about, they do have expectations, but we might interpret them different. Due through whether it's lack of communication, whether it's in how you experience things. And I don't think we ask that clarifying question enough. Or you may have asked it once, but like I said, like visions and things change. So are you clear on the expectation or what you need in that moment, or what you're expecting? And being honest about that too. But on the other side of that, like, I think I needed to experience those things, because now that is like one of the number one things I deal with people with on the consulting side of things, especially students, and they're becoming decision makers and they're figuring themselves out. Because now I can say like, no, like this is actually the way that you should think, or not necessarily telling them the way that they should think, but giving them the questions to be able to figure out what does that look like for themselves.
But I mean, a lot comes with that because they're students, right? So when we were students, we was trying to figure it out, still trying to figure it out right now, right? We might got a vision and got goals and habits that we want to transition into a better lifestyle, but how do we know when we that age? You know what I'm saying?
Well, I'll be honest, I think I always knew.
Okay.
I just didn't think I trusted myself enough or thought it was possible because it was something that was different. I never thought that I couldn't do anything that I like put my mind to, but when you're trying to do something that doesn't exist or it's not in your purview or it's different, that's what makes it tough. So you're learning as you're doing. And it's funny, I said this in the first episode. I was having a conversation, I'll say my sister cousin Lauren, and we were on the phone and we were just like talking about some things that I had going on. And she was like, I haven't seen you. I'm just like, what's going on? You've been MIA. I was like, this is what I'm working on. And she was like, you know what's crazy? She was like, you've been manifesting this stuff since we were kids. And so I feel like it's a yes and like they're happening and they're happening in their time and season and the way in which they're supposed to. And it looks a little different than what I thought, but
Yeah.
it worked out the way that it should.
It looks a little different than you thought. I've been grappling with that for the past year or so. Because you ask God or universe, Yahweh, Mama, whoever, for something, and you just don't know what it's going to look like. It might be what you asked for, the actual tangible item or the actual product is just different. So I've been very intentional about that too. When I pray and talk to God, is just a difference in what I'm asking for right now. But manifesting as a child, that hits home for me because I've been doing the same thing. My lifestyle right now is, like I said, is very colorful, and this is the lifestyle that I've always wanted.
Okay, so let me paint a picture for you because I got to get this hot take in.
Okay.
So I invited myself to dinner with my dad and one of my uncles, my Uncle John, who's like my dad and my uncle's like best friend. They grew up together. And so I'm really blessed to have like great, I'll call them seasoned folk in my life. And also be in the position to have like real and vulnerable conversations with them. And so as I'm kind of like knocking on 30's door, like, and I said too, I feel like this podcast is kind of like walking me into that next season, but I've just been having these like real reflective conversations with the people who I value and I know that they have wisdom. But typically I get to have a lot of those conversations with women. I don't always have the like uninterrupted time with men. And so we had this interesting conversation just about where I'm at in life and goals and just them like dealing with my 1,000 questions and being open to answering them. And I had this aha moment, and that brings me to today's episode's hot take, okay? Because I think it's important to get this in real time. So we were just talking about life and the way people choose to go after things and what they choose to do. And my hot take basically is that as we're becoming, men choose to live life and find themselves first, then build. And on the other side, women choose to build and accomplish. Then they feel, confident enough to kind of like live life and find themselves, which creates this interesting parallel to this idea of becoming. And I'm curious to get your thoughts. Yeah, so basically the Reader's Digest. Women, they're like, okay, I'm gonna achieve, I'm gonna get this done. Okay, I'm gonna go to school, I'm gonna get the job, I'm gonna get all the things. So then I could, not to say coast, but then you can say like, okay, I'm gonna live the life that I deserve or I want, or I'm gonna find myself if that's gonna be what it is. But they do all of the like traditional things first of like, okay, the checklist. Then men choose to like, you know what, I'm gonna find myself, I'm gonna live life, I'm gonna experience things, I'm gonna figure it all out. And then they're like, okay, they get to this point where they're like, okay, I'm gonna start building. Okay, now this is where this is gonna make sense. And then this is what I'm gonna do, right? And so it's the same journey, but an interesting parallel of when it actually kind of aligns.
That is very, very interesting. I think I'm on the parallel of the feminine side. Yeah, I conquered gold early, and right now I'm like finding that openness to opening my life and having new experiences and expanding my palette. But for me in the beginning, it was 60-40. So 60% get your things in order, 40% was play. Right now, I think it's still that ratio, but I think that, like I said, early on I had to get to it. A lot of my friends, when I was going to school, a lot of my friends were had stopped going, so I had to push through and keep going. I saw a vision for myself, so I think it's opposite for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So do you think that's a generational thing, or you think that you're the unicorn?
I don't want to call myself a unicorn, but people just have their own paths in life. My path is my path, yours is yours. The way that someone operates dictates and determines how that path turns out. I've just got to always worry about me meaning manifesting, elevating, and evolving. So this is what that looks like. I can't do the thing that I was doing at the age of 24. At the age of 32, that look a little crazy for me. Can't wear Jabot jeans no more, unless I doubt those how they can. But I just gotta always graduate in thought. I call it all the alleys, right? Alleys meaning financially, emotionally, physically, mentally, intellectually. Have to evolve on all avenues at all times. So I don't know. Depends on the person. Choices.
Interesting.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
I don't know. I have thoughts.
Please advise.
I feel like it could be the patriarchy. It could be a systemic thing. But I do think there's a pressure, especially on Black women.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
I feel like knowing that like we are pretty much the number one educated group, but we're the least likely to be in leadership. Right. I think we're often expected to save the world, but we're the people saving you. And I just feel like a lot of that is rooted in like the way in which you're brought up of like, okay, do these things so then you can figure out everything else out. And I do feel like sometimes there's a luxury for men to be like, I'm gonna figure it out. And when I'm ready to figure out what like life looks like for me, then that's always going to be okay. Versus women have that kind of like, I also think the sense of time as well.
Time, yeah.
And we're always put in a position where we have to choose.
Stepping into my 30s, having these conversations.
You're in the 30s. You're not stepping anymore. I would say, you're in them.
I would say it before, right? I would say in my 30s, starting. Right. Right now, I'm walking into my 30s. I'm discovering a whole new me.
I'll give you early 30s.
Okay. So, stepping into my early 30s, I have these conversations with women about being in a relationship, marriage, having children. I see that it's very stressful on some, and I don't know what that feels like. I can't even understand it. At any rate, though, that's societal pressures too. You know what I'm saying? That's placed upon y'all as y'all growing up as little girls. You know what I'm saying? It's just a different outlook it's just a different spectrum when you talk about men and women having this free form of life.
Yeah, and I don't think that's just a piece of it. I don't think that's all of it, because some people don't want that, and that's okay too. But thinking about like what people expect for you, or when those conversations change, is really funny. Like, you go from people telling you like, don't have kids, so the next thing, next conversation is like, where are they at?
Same here.
Down to think like what you want to do with your life. Like, can you explore? Can you figure it out? Can you change? Or like, no, you need to be a little bit more realistic, or other those things. And I also think life just naturally times women.
Yeah.
Because that's real. Like you could say like it doesn't bother you personally, but that most people aren't like Tamron Hall and these other people who can also afford to have kids or things
Yeah.
like at 50 or other things. So I do recognize that things like that, like depending on when you want those things or if you want those things or whatever, how that matters. But I do think often people have to choose instead of just kind of like getting that opportunity to discover. And that's where I feel like confidence comes in, as we were talking about earlier, like confidence in your journey of what that looks like for you, giving yourself time to figure out who you are at each facet of life, because who I was even at 27 was very different than what 28 has been for me.
Okay.
Just in a year's time. And then now I'm interested to see like what 29 will be or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's interesting to kind of dig deep in that concept.
It is. I had a conversation with a young man the other day about because he told me that he was an atheist out of nowhere. Like, why you going there? Like, I don't even know your last name, buddy. So he said that because it was Easter just had passed, and I was like, did you enjoy your holiday? So he's like, no, I'm an atheist. So he was interested to know what I believed in, and I told him I'm not sure. I'm just trying to figure it out. But I just felt that his energy needed someone to talk to because he was on the edge of harming someone, and he was having girl problems at the same time. And he's probably in his 30s, but I was just talking to him like, man, you don't want to put yourself in that position because you're having personal problems. Maybe break down what you're going through, what you in the bar, so that makes your thought process a little bit jaded. You know what I'm saying, when it comes to things of that nature. And I guess I talked him off the ledge. He told me that he hopes I have kids. Like that's a beautiful thing to say, my man. I've never heard that in my life. But thank you. I was like, why did you say that you think I should have kids? Or that you hope I should have kids? And he's like, because you're a good person. Like I wouldn't have had this conversation with no one else. But you were the right person for the conversation.
Well, I feel like we need a part 2 just on this concept of you're the right person for the conversation.
I agree because I've been asking the universe to put me in the right place at the right time.
Somebody literally said that to me verbatim yesterday.
What is that?
Like verbatim.
Really?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
So anyways, so that's a part 2. But so wrapping up, because it's crazy, we're almost out of time already.
Really? Time flies, we have a good time.
Yeah. So at the end of every episode, I make everybody choose a word. So you know this already, but my word for the year is wholeness, right? Showing up in every asset whole. And so what I mean by whole is like not just not shrinking, but being confident, being authentic, being genuine, and also obedient to the journey, right? Like the whole experience, the whole person in every area. So I'm curious, if you had to pick a word for this year, what would your word be? I'm curious to see if it's the same or if it changed.
No. What's on the tip of my tongue is evolving. This is April, I would say. It's like Q2 and Q2. I would say evolving into evolving. Well, that's hard. One word is hard.
Okay, why evolving?
Because that's the stage that I'm in right now. That's the stage that I've been going through over the past couple of years. Finding the confidence within myself, coming into who I am, being a little bit more free thinking. I'm forever evolving. Like I said, I got to work on me, which stands for manifesting, elevating, and evolving. It's a constant thing. I find myself having conversations with people that I never would have had conversations with. My vision and my take on things are a lot different. Maybe I don't explode as quick as I would within the previous years. So I'm evolving. I would say evolving.
Okay, approved. Okay, last thing, because this just made me think about it. So I feel like you have to answer. Yeah.
You had that question before, so do you remember what my answer was?
Yes, your answer. Why are you laughing? I remember people's words when they tell me.
What was it?
I take this very seriously.
I
This is
know.
not, this is real,
That's a
this
fact.
is content,
fact.
okay? No, but your word was alignment, not evolving.
Okay, I can see that. Right.
But you're picking this for a quarter, so you made this your own.
Yeah,
So we'll say
okay.
quarter one was alignment.
Quarter two,
Now you're
evolving.
evolving. On brand nonetheless. Last question. In this current season of evolving, seeking purpose,
Okay.
what's one thing you're hopeful for?
One thing that I'm hopeful for is happiness. That's one thing I'm hopeful for. I could say, or what I wanted to say was freedom, but my freedom is gonna lead to my happiness.
Always go with your first mind. Happiness it is.
Yes.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Apologize for the technical difficulties. But I really do feel like we need to have a part 2 on this. You're the right person for the conversation. Just sticking with. Alrighty, thank you.